Welcome to the Curriculum Toolkit video, Finding the Why of Curriculum Rationale 1, the Empathy Walk Toolkit. This video provides support for colleagues wishing to engage with staff as part of the first phase of Curriculum Rationale. It draws on a tool created by Education Scotland. Throughout these videos, I'll be referring to key ideas and toolkits. The first is an approach to system change leadership. This came to my attention via talks by Santiago Rincon Gallardo and Education Scotland, and it has informed the approach taken by the Scott Group. This approach proposes that effective change leadership needs to address three needs. These being the intellectual, the head, the emotional, the heart, and behavioural, the hands. I propose that we can also think about these as meeting the needs of the emotional motivation, the strategic thinking, and practical approaches to system change. However, I would urge caution in tying these too neatly to these boxes. The second of these is a double diamond design paradigm. This is a useful approach when considering system change leadership, and the sessions, the videos ahead, are designed to support you throughout this design process. Finally, our design development will be supported by East Lothian's Rationale Toolkit. This is available on the EduHub, as are the other tools and resources available to support this. I want to begin briefly to look at the double design process itself. This has been created out with education to support service design. For the purpose of this video, we're going to focus on the first phase. So you'll see that they are labelled in red, and it's the empathise phase. This presentation is designed to demonstrate how you would use the presentation available in the EduHub with staff members. So I'll talk you through the slides, describe how you would use these, the expectations, how you might frame that, and respond to what's happening in the room with your staff members. This one asks leaders to take their staff on an empathy walk. And this is about thinking about the curriculum for all the learners, for now and in the future. And it invites school colleagues to think about putting themselves literally in the shoes of that learner and really getting into what the experience is. And it asks colleagues to select one learner for whom they're going to focus on. They're going to really build a profile around what they look like. Using the handout in the next slide I'm going to show you, it's going to be asking colleagues to think about somebody, think about their background, their hopes, their dreams, what excites them. And we're going to start just by doing that by asking our colleagues to think about somebody before we then start putting pen to paper. So you'll see here in the bottom right hand corner, there's a handout that's available on the EduHub within the tools that are there in the linked page. And this asks colleagues to begin to build a learner persona template, mapping out what that individual looks like. Leave it to colleagues to think about which young person they want to choose and what's motivating that. But underneath that, I guess I'm probably looking for them to choose somebody they know very well, and possibly somebody for whom they have a rich information regarding that young person and maybe their needs. Moving on from that, I think it's useful to recenter ourselves and revisit our national curriculum context. This question, what is the purpose of education, is a really good one to begin to engage colleagues in the room And in a way, we're inviting colleagues to step into the empathy walk and step out of it as we move our way through. It's deliberately a big question. So you'll see here, I've asked colleagues to think about working in pairs or small groups, and we're doing some defining statements. So under that question, what is the purpose of education? What are the things that staff in the room really value? What is it? What we're all here to try and do? Then move on to introduce the response given by educationalist Santiago Ricon Gallardo. And he defined it under these 4 points here. It was in the back of that Ricon Gallardo looked at Scottish education and found that actually there was something very familiar in that. The very things that he defined for the purpose of education were exemplified, different language I grant you, but exemplified within the 4 capacities. And that's why he's identified Scotland as a key partner. The question there to be asking, how much does this reflect what staff were describing? Even in the context of current education reform, the 4 capacities remain at the heart of our curriculum and its purpose. I think it's worth revisiting with staff Scotland's national framework. This continues to inform the why, the what and the how of our curriculum, and they're really useful to be revisiting, particularly the how section. You could place any part of your curriculum within that heart and use the tools around that to be exploring and testing, are we getting our curriculum right and is it meeting the needs of that? Finally, I don't want to dwell on this, but it's useful to be looking at this and thinking about how it unpacks 4 capacities, how we might be able to see that in more detail. Next, the settings. I think it's worth it remembering and exploring that there are the 4 areas of the curriculum that we should be thinking about and that holistic look at our curriculum. Okay, on to our next task. And we're going back to that learner that staff members were thinking about. We're going to be using the handout provided and asking colleagues to again dig deeper into that young person. What do they see? What do they hear? What do they know? And how do they feel in their classroom, in school, at home, in their community? It might be that there's very similar answers to those questions, or it might be quite different. And this is the handout that is available in the EduHub, in the toolkit, that you'll be able to use. The last part of this takes it a step further, and it really asks colleagues to really dig into that young person. It asks them to consider that learner's experience, because we're moving from that point where we're asking the question, how do we see the young person and how do they actually feel? And we're inviting colleagues to think about maybe how the behaviours are demonstrated, tell us one thing, or what we see is one thing, but maybe what underneath those behaviours are other things that are informing that. The last stage of this process asks colleagues to go back to the 4 capacities. Our experience in running these both directly but also feedback from colleagues is that when they do this part of the section, it can really be quite emotive. So have that in mind when you're working with colleagues in the room. Ask the question to those in the room, that young person to whom they're now embodying and they're thinking about that experience. Ask the question of how many of the 4 capacities could that young person identify as? Which of the 4 capacities do you see yourself in? And by you, we're placing ourselves right in the shoes of that learner. Do they feel in school they are successful learners? Do they feel they're confident individuals? Do they feel responsible citizens? Are they given opportunities for that? And within school, are they having opportunities and feeling a sense of effective contributors? At this point in time, my experience as of colleagues who have run this session previously has been that often we end up with quite a quiet room. In most cases, I've found very few or no hands go up to identify any of the four capacities. Most often, because of who people have selected to embody as a persona, they derive at actually they don't see themselves in any of the four capacities within a school. That can just to quite a low point in our session. It asks us to ask deep questions about our schools, our classes, but also about our wider education system. But actually, that gets to the heart of what the moral purpose of this is. It gets to the stage of asking that deep question, because if we're not getting it right, then we need to be asking, in terms of curriculum reform, what is in our gift to be able to change things, to enable our learners to be the four capacities. And that's where things can turn, and actually it becomes quite exciting at the opportunities that arise. This video was intended to introduce one aspect of the first phase of Double Diamond design process, and that's described as to empathise. This session has been intended to create opportunity for you, yourself and colleagues to be digging into thinking about our learners, putting ourselves in their shoes. On the EduHub, you can access this resource, which provides more tools to be able to explore in looking at that empathise phase. Once that's completed, you can also look at the define phase. Don't forget though, you can always move backwards and forwards in amongst a diamond as you head towards the rationale and move on from that into the second stage of the process, curriculum design and curriculum making. I hope you have found this video helpful and practical to use with colleagues. Thank you.